Meet Tyler. It's late on a Thursday night, and he's alone in his office, slumped in his chair, staring at an endless row of data on his screen. His tie is loosened, his sleeves rolled up, and a half-empty coffee cup sits cold at his desk, evidence of the long hours he's put in. He runs a hand over his face and feels the weight of exhaustion settle in as he glances over at a packed dinner his wife left for him that's untouched. The numbers in the screen blur together, a frustrating reminder of how slow progress has been, and a pang of doubt tugs at his mind. Tyler, the senior vice president of marketing at a fast-growing tech company in San Francisco, has poured every ounce of energy into a high-profile rebranding initiative. But after 3 months, the results are trickling in far slower than he expected. Tyler is known for his relentless drive and ambitious spirit, qualities that got him to the executive level, but this project is testing his patience. In the past, he'd rely on quick wins and immediate results to fuel his motivation. Now, dealing with a slower pace of a major strategic shift is making him feel like he's losing his grip. Every day he leaves the office thinking, maybe I should change direction, or is this even worth it? Outside of work, Tyler's restlessness is bleeding into his personal life. He's become short-tempered with his wife and distant from his 2 kids who rarely see him during the week. And lately, at night, he finds himself reaching for an extra drink, trying to unwind from the endless stream of stress and self-doubt that has taken over his evenings. The pressure he's placed on himself is mounting, and the cracks are beginning to show. Today, I'll be speaking with Dr. Emilio Justo, an award-winning international TEDx speaker and best-selling author of The Power of Pause, Mastering Delayed Gratification for Success. Dr. Justo, whose TEDx talk was ranked the number 3 TEDx talk globally in 2023, understands the struggle of having to balance ambition with patience. And his work is a blueprint on resilience and enduring fulfillment, supporting leaders like Tyler to find strength in the journey, even when you don't get the results instantly. And I'm excited to hear how he would advise Tyler on how to tap into the power of pause and realign vision, as well as reintroduce balance into his work and his life. My name is Jay Abbasi, and welcome to Unstuck. Real people, real stories, real solutions. While the details are changed to protect anonymity, what you just heard is based on a true story of challenges that come up in the real world. And we discuss how to navigate these environments with practical tips to help you get unstuck and build a more fulfilling, impactful, and balanced life and career. So Emilio, we'll get to Tyler's story here in a bit, but I really am interested in learning more about your story. You were born in Cuba. Your family immigrated to the US when I think you were 3 years old.
Correct.
And I want to ask you, what's one of your earliest memories of that experience?
Oh gosh, there's so many great memories. Coming to the United States at such a young age, we settled in Gary, Indiana. And for some of your audience members who are old enough, Gary was the home of Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5. So they were just getting their start in the mid-'60s when we were settling there. But I didn't actually grow up in Gary. My parents sent me with my grandparents, who actually were in a small college town in Missouri called Tarkio College, because my grandparents came over separately. And we were sponsored, each of us were sponsored by church organizations to enter the United States. So I grew up with my grandparents from kindergarten through 4th grade. And that was the most incredible experience. My grandparents were a second set of parents to me. And we lived in a dorm room on the college campus. I was surrounded by college students all the time. It was just such an amazing journey. I learned so much. And so that's one incredible memory. Another not so good memory, but it is kind of fun to reminisce, is that when I would go back to Gary, let's say at Christmas time to see my parents, I went with my grandmother to downtown Gary, which was within walking distance of where we lived. And, my grandmother didn't speak a lick of English. I mean, not one word. And we're walking home with all these bags, things that we had purchased. And right on the way, unfortunately, we get mugged. Somebody comes up to us, presumably with a gun. They didn't show the gun, but they had it like in
Wow.
their pocket, pointing to us, saying, give me all your bags. And my grandmother, being, an old immigrant, you can imagine the stereotype of this old, tough immigrant grandmother, wouldn't do it. And I was like scared out of my mind. I'm like, give him the bags, give him the bags. And no, she wouldn't do it. Next thing you know, she starts screaming. And fortunately, the guy freaked out and he ran away. But, it could have taken a much worse turn, obviously. But I do think about that because it just reminds me of the fortitude that my grandmother had back then as an immigrant to this country.
That is not what most people would say you should do in that scenario.
No,
But
I know.
I'm glad it worked out, and I'm glad everyone was safe. But that's quite the story, and you've shared in some of your great talks, and your TEDx's are phenomenal. For anyone who hasn't watched them yet, they have millions of views. They're both excellent talks, and you really speak from the heart, and you tell your story. And I watched your TED talk, and you talk about what it was like growing up, where you didn't have as much as some of your other friends. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and what kind of life lessons that stayed with you from that experience?
Yeah, certainly. One of the examples that I give, which seems like such a reli- you know just simple example, but it really has always stuck with me, is that I've always been an only child. My parents, when we came over from Cuba, consciously chose not to have more children, simply because they didn't have the financial resources. They didn't want to raise a family without money. So they concentrated their efforts, not only their love, but also whatever little bit they had financially, to send me to parochial school, et cetera, et cetera. But in high school, I was always very athletic as a youth. And in high school, our parochial high school had a hockey team. And we were actually very, very good in hockey. And I loved hockey. But the catch was that you had to buy your own equipment. It's not like, let's say, when you play football, typically they provide all the pads and the uniforms and the helmet and all that. Not for the hockey. You had to actually buy all your own equipment at our high school, because our high school was small and it didn't have that many resources. And I understood. I understood what it meant to not have a lot of money. And I fully understood that my parents were sacrificing and doing everything they could on my behalf. And
Mm.
so I just made the decision to drop out. I went through the tryouts, I made the team, et cetera. But I just couldn't find it within me to ask my parents, because it was this huge sacrifice. Buying all that equipment, was hundreds of dollars, which may not sound like a lot today, but back then, in the 1970s, by that point, that was a lot of money for my parents. So I just couldn't bring myself to doing that. So I didn't ask them, and life went on.
Yeah. Well, there's so much that we learn from these kind of upbringings where, things aren't always handed to us, and we have to learn how to be resilient and be able to work for the things that maybe other people are getting nice and easy and packaged for them. And you've put this into a really nice statement of, I think you call it the Cuban triad. I heard you talk about that.
Yes,
And
yes.
you said it's fueled your success. What is the Cuban triad?
Yeah, so my Cuban triad, which I formulated it consciously just to give, I think the talk that you're referring to at Cambridge University earlier this summer. But it wasn't something that I thought about consciously growing up. It was just the innate triad that I had within me. So number one of that triad is self-discipline, right? You have to be disciplined in anything you're going to do in life, whether it's professionally, personally. There's got to be a disciplined focus on what we do. And so that's number one. Number two is resilience and perseverance. And we have to be resilient. We have to be able to bounce forward from every failure and challenge in our lives. And I've had a number of them. I mean, and I think I still continue to have the challenges and keep making mistakes. But we have to embrace those failures and be able to move forward. And the third one is what I based my first TEDx talk in my book on, which is delayed gratification. And that delayed gratification, again, was not a conscious thing. It was just my whole life. We didn't have much. So I had to just take things in stride. I had to be patient. I had to work for whatever I had. I was not gifted this silver spoon. Everything in my life, I can say that good or bad, I tell my kids, I say, I can be proud that I'm a self-made man. I didn't inherit a dime. I didn't have anyone present me with these opportunities. I wasn't a person of privilege, as so much is talked about nowadays about, privilege. No, I mean, I was just an ordinary guy, and I'm still, I think, an ordinary guy, but I was an ordinary guy who made the most of the resources that I had in front of me. And coming to the United States, the whole reason my parents made that courageous decision, I mean, think about it, as an adult. I mean, I don't know if I could do what my parents did. My parents, who were adults, fled their homeland because of communism, of course, but they fled. We had nothing on our backs except our clothes. We were not allowed to take any material possessions, nothing. And here they come to a new land where they don't speak the language. And they came here specifically for me, to give me, and in my future life, freedom and opportunity, which they felt would not be available in Cuba after Fidel.
Yeah.
So that's an incredible journey. And I just thank them every minute, every day of that courageous decision.
Yeah. And it of course, their intention was to give you this opportunity. And it had a byproduct of teaching you how to delay gratification. I'm sure they weren't thinking that, right?
Correct. Correct.
But it's what happened, which is it's through the experience of it happened to you naturally. So what for the person who doesn't have that experience, they didn't have that kind of upbringing, so they're kind of wired to instant gratification, which is
Right.
what we see everywhere, right, Emilio? I mean, everywhere we go, people order something on Amazon, it comes the same day at times. It's incredible, right? So we're very much a society that's wired by instant gratification. I think that you're pointing to the value of delayed gratification. How do you recommend people connect those dots and be able to learn how to delay their gratification?
Well, I think one has to make a conscious effort to understand that true success in our lives, and when I say success, don't think of it specifically as material or financial, just success in any aspect of our life, personal, professional, but it requires time, and it requires patience, and it requires persistence and perseverance and resilience. And we just have to uh, think to ourselves, let's set specific goals that we can achieve. Let's set a big lofty goal for the long term, but then along the way we set smaller goals, and every time that we hit a milestone or achieve something, we celebrate it inside of us. It gives us positive energy, positive feedback to energize us to take the next step. And so it has to be a conscious effort because you're right, Jay. I mean, I know this through our own children who are young. They're 13, 17, and 20, and they're all about instant gratification. Even when they hear me preach these other concepts, they're so used to having everything right now and not having the patience to
Yeah.
really work for it. And boy, it's difficult. I mean, growing up in today's society, my goodness, what a challenge. So much different than when I was growing up and perhaps when you were growing up. So it has to be a conscious effort.
Yeah. I'm glad you put it that way, because as someone who is an expert in this area and you talk about it all the time, you're acknowledging that you still have to put in the effort every day,
Absolutely.
right? It's not
Absolutely.
it's not something that, hey, once you get it, you don't have to think about it again. No, you have to keep it in the front of your mind. You have to be intentional every single day. And I too find that I fall into that pattern, Emilio. I mean, if I allow myself, I will be just consuming as much instant gratification as my mind will allow for, whether that's in the
Right.
form of eating great food or, just enjoying some entertainment, whatever it is. And so, okay, so like, let me ask you this, like from your day to day, what are some ways in which you practically do that? And I mean, is it in the form of journaling, or is it in the form of just taking a pause? Is it in the form of having a way to talk through it with somebody? What's really worked for you to not fall into that pattern, that very easy pattern to fall into of just
Right.
getting as much
Right.
instant gratification as possible, into delaying it for something that's something bigger that you're after?
Right. Well, a couple of things, Jay. First of all, I'll be the first to admit that I fall into that instant gratification. And what I'm preaching isn't that we should never have instant gratification.
Right.
That's not what I'm saying. I mean, there's a time and a place for instant gratification. And as I've gotten older in my life, right, I think I shared with you that I just turned 40, that as I've, that's a joke, that as I've gotten older in my life, um, I have made the conscious decision to maybe have a little more instant gratification. But the delayed gratification really has come naturally to me. And because I've had that self discipline that's just been wired into me, that it's not as painful as it might be for others. What's a perfect example? So, Jay, I'm here with you today. Now, this journey that I've now have begun, which I began a little over a year ago with my first TEDx. Right? Keep in mind, uh, I'm now in my 36th year of full-time medical surgical practice. Right? That's what I do 50 hours a week.
Mm.
So that's my gig that I've had. But I've now started a new gig, if you will, and that is the speaking gig, whether it be on a TEDx stage or any other stage. And and I do, I appear on many podcasts, like the one that I'm so privileged to be on with you. And this has been a process, and I'm learning along the way. And this has only been a little over a year. Now, if I had an instant gratification mindset, I would think that I'd be so famous and this, that, and the other. But no, I mean, I'm working hard. I'm having like two jobs right now is essentially what I have, and and it's wonderful because when I pause, and that's one of my keys for me personally. I mean, I know journaling is very important, and I've gone through cycles where I do journal for a few months, and then I kind of fall off the wagon and I stop doing it. So that in and of itself is a great tool, but it does require a certain amount of consistent effort to do that. To me, uh, being raised as an only child, I have a certain introverted side of me, and
Mm.
I like my peace and quiet and just contemplating, almost like my own type of meditation, not the traditional meditation that people think of, but I just like thinking to myself and having that serenity. Um, so that works for me, but everyone has to find their own way of achieving that. But you have to make a consistent, diligent effort, and there's got to be a conscious side to it. Otherwise, it'll never happen, and you'll get swept into the instant gratification all the time.
Yeah, and we see it in Tyler's story how it could have a negative impact, where he feels like he's failing at his job, and it's affecting his relationships with his family, how he is really short with his loved ones, his mental and emotional well-being. walk me through that. Like, why does that? Why does that end up being the result? Like when people fall into that trap of instant gratification, where they're overloading themselves with it. Why does it have such a negative outcome on us?
Well, using the case of Tyler, that story about Tyler, I think, is probably such a classic reoccurring story. So here's a guy who is a high achiever. He has an ambitious drive, and he relies upon what I call these quick wins, that he's conditioned to expect these immediate results. But I think that his mindset is such that his impatience results from him feeling that success has to be fast, and slow progress is equivalent to failure. So going back to the whole delayed gratification concept, Tyler needs to understand, or someone needs to teach him, that true success oftentimes requires time, patience, and persistence. And not having those immediate results is not necessarily a bad thing. It's a complete paradigm shift in my view. Also, I think Tyler needs to understand the importance of that power of pause, which happens to be the title to my book. But that power of pause, and taking some intentional breaks, reflecting, reassessing. Those small shifts can be monumental in re-energizing his thought process. And the fact that he doesn't have this balance in his life, which, believe me, I think most of us have struggled with. I know that I've struggled with work-life balance, so it's an easy thing to talk about, but it's a different thing to actually put into practice. But his imbalance in his family life, it's fracturing his relationship with his family. So I think that sometimes we have to set firm boundaries for ourselves, have a specific cutoff time where we're going to stop work, we're going to decompress, we're going to spend time with family, we're going to do some other activities, whether it be go to the gym, meditate, whatever the case may be. Each person has their own their own situation. And then lastly, Tyler, that is, needs kind of a framework for facing those long-term challenges that he's under at his job. And by cultivating that resilience and that perseverance, and viewing that the setbacks, which I call temporary steps back rather than setbacks, are a slow progress as part of the journey, right? That it's not just, Tyler is so focused on the destination that he's not really enjoying the journey. And,
Yeah.
and so we have to encourage him to strategize, be persistent, embrace that resilience. And by doing so, he can really find strength and patience in the process.
What I'm finding in Tyler's story, I hear it all the time with people who are really struggling, is he has an unhealthy expectation. His expectation is that success should come immediately, that he should see the fruits of his labor right away, that he should be getting that pat on the back from the CEO. And what I think, but let me get your thoughts on this, is that it's happening at a subconscious level often. Like, I don't think he's aware that he has this unhealthy expectation. And what would help him is to have a bit more of a healthy expectation as to what he could anticipate the results will be over that long period of time. It's like he's not even thinking about it. He's not aware of it.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And that's typically the way it occurs. It occurs on a very insidious subconscious level. I mean, very few of us purposely make the choice to, oh, gee, we got to work 24 hours a day and do this and do that. No, I mean, it just, you fall into that trap, into that pattern. I've fallen into it, no doubt. And so someone, I mean, hopefully Tyler himself, but maybe a close confidant, a spouse, a loved one, a dear friend, someone needs to basically try and have Tyler reframe his mental efforts to take those pauses, take those breaks, understand the power, which I firmly believe that power of delayed gratification, and have realistic expectations that not everything is going to be achieved quickly. But if you stick to it and if you have that persistence and that resilience, believe me, great things will come at the end. I mean, undoubtedly for all of us, but it has to be a conscious effort to change that paradigm. It just won't happen otherwise if you don't set your mind to it and reframe your attitudes and your expectations.
It is a reframe. I think that word is pointing to exactly what Tyler needs, a reframe. And there is some conditioning, as you said before, that he's had from his upbringing, that I get what I want fast and it makes me feel good and I feel successful. And then when he's in an environment where he's not getting that, because as you grow your career and you take on bigger projects and you have to have more patience. There's more of a strategic approach to your success. It's not just this quick win every single time, win, 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 win. Now, there's a word that you brought up to me last time we chatted, and I had to ask you about it. The word is obsession. And oftentimes there is a negative connotation to this word. There's a stigma. You have a different angle to this word, obsession. So Tyler, as you referred to, he's facing, you didn't say setbacks, negative steps.
Temporary steps back.
Temporary steps back, right? Temporary steps back. How would obsession help him to be more successful?
Well, he has to be obsessed with, well, first of all, let me define, if I may,
Please.
what I think of as obsession, because most of us jump to the conclusion that obsession is negative because we think of, a psychiatric disease or obsessive compulsive disorder or something of that nature. And that's definitely not what I'm speaking of. I'm speaking of a positive obsession where we are passionate about our purpose, our goals, our aspirations, and we live and breathe them, and we make sure that we will bring them to fruition. And so that passion is what I'm referring to as obsession. So in Tyler's case, uh, I would argue that he has the negative type of obsession, that you can say, well, he's working all these hours, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, but he almost has an OCD trait because he just, keeps working, working, working. But working alone is not enough. We have to get into that right mindset where if we are patient, if we perform consistently over time, and if we're persistent, and if we're resilient, that we can achieve those tasks that we set out to do. And we have to have that obsessive drive, right? So that obsessive drive is key. I mean, going back to my own example here, this journey that I've been on this past year, my wife would tell you that I'm pretty obsessed about it because I'm passionate about spreading my word, and whether others around me may be on the same page or not. This has been my life's journey. And so I want to kind of, celebrate my journey and share it with others. And that's why I'm choosing to do this. So I mean, I don't have to be spending all this time writing books, doing podcasts, doing TEDx talks and speeches. I don't need to be doing that. I could be sitting home watching TV and watching football. But I'm obsessed with what I want to the legacy that I want to leave to those who fall behind me. So, yeah. So I think obsession in a positive connotation is what Tyler needs, not the negative obsession that I feel that he's demonstrating.
Yeah. His negative obsession is more of an addiction.
That's right.
It's an addiction to getting validation, an addiction to whatever the dopamine kicks he's getting for having those quick wins and seeing his success. What you're referring to how I imagined it, please let me know your thoughts on this, is it's like a passionate focus.
That
So,
is correct.
right, it's like that's what I'm, that destination that I'm after, although it's not, I'm attached to it needing to come to me right away, which is the portion of delayed gratification we talked about earlier. But I just have this obsessive focus on it where I keep my eyes on it. And every day when I'm waking up, I'm reminding myself to look at that goal that I'm after, and then be able to let go of it a bit and just focus on the task at hand, which I know is getting me towards it.
That is correct. I mean, you summarized that brilliantly. That is exactly what I'm talking about. That we
Yeah.
just have to have that passionate focus and keep working towards it. Not let it consume us too much to take away, our happiness and our personal life and our family, but to stay focused on it day in and day out. And along the way, there are going to be those quote unquote setbacks or temporary steps back. And that's okay. It's okay to have those failures along the way. We should rejoice. We should embrace those failures because they are going to teach us important things that we then need to learn from so that we can take the next step and be even better. So I'm a firm believer. And Jay, let me tell you, man, I have made every mistake there is to make, both personally and professionally. I mean, some huge ones,
Yeah.
and I think to myself, and I'm sincere when I tell you this, that I think to myself, if I had to live my life over again, knowing the mistakes and the failures that I encountered, I think I would just do it all over again the same way, because it's those failures, it's those failures that have pushed me and taught me how to be better and how to succeed. Had I not had those failures, I don't think I would have had the success that I've had in my life. So, it's a different mindset.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And I really appreciate how this entire conversation has pointed to the fact that it isn't binary. What I mean by that is, it isn't that you go for these goals and you make it just about the goal and you forget about living a happy life and you just have to, delay all of your gratification for this goal. No, it's integrating it into where you can have that kind of obsessive focus towards the goal. But then, as you alluded to earlier, have those moments of pause. Every now and then it's okay to give yourself a little bit of that instant gratification. Every now
That's
and
right.
then, it's all right to, as you said before, close the computer and shut down the work and just acknowledge your progress along the way. And how I like to sum up these conversations, I like to put you into a little bit of a scenario where you are interacting with Tyler in our story. So let's say you're getting off your next TEDx stage, okay? And you just got a standing ovation. Of course you did, because you're excellent on stage, Emilio. And you're now speaking with the people who are in the audience. Everyone's kind of interacting. And, it's about that time to go where everything's wrapping up. And Tyler is there. He's in the audience. And he was very moved by your talk. And Tyler tells you his story. Now you have to go because you got a flight to catch. You got to leave soon. But you have a moment there to just give him one piece of advice. What do you say to Tyler right there before you leave?
I say, Tyler, I understand what you're going through. I empathize with you. I've been there, I've done that. But let's reframe and change our paradigm, and let's look at your journey and your goals as a lengthy journey and not one that's going to be achieved overnight. And let's enjoy the process, whether it's the wins that you're going to get along the way or whether it's the losses. Let's enjoy the process. It's all good, Tyler. And let's have that positive attitude and set realistic expectations. Let's give yourself the grace to pause, to enjoy the moment, to reflect. Let's set up, make sure that you have a deliberate balance and set the boundaries in your life so that you can have happiness both personally and professionally. And Tyler, last but not least, make sure that you understand the power of resilience, the power of persistence and perseverance, and the power of obsession, which is an incredible power to be able to have that unlimited success and to unleash the drive within, as I mentioned in the TEDx talk, is the obsession advantage to unleashing the drive within. So, Tyler, you can do it, and keep the positive attitude. That's what I would tell him.
Yeah. One of my favorite byproducts of doing this podcast is that I learn just as much as everyone who's listening in the audience. So I listen to that like I'm Tyler, and I'm listening to that like I'm downloading it all, like you're speaking directly to me, Emilio. So I appreciate that. And I hope everyone listening felt the same way, because there was so many lessons there that we can take with us that we need reminders of regularly. Because I know everyone who listens here, you're ambitious. You want to achieve, you want more, but you also want to be happy. And I think, Emilio, you summed it up beautifully there. If anyone wants to, I encourage people to watch Emilio's TEDx talks. You can go to DrEmilioJusto.com, DrEmilioJusto.com. It's in the show notes. Your talks are there. You also have all of your podcast features, your magazine article as well. And from there, people can reach out to you. If anyone's looking to book a great speaker on this topic, I highly recommend reaching out to Emilio. He is fantastic. He's a wonderful speaker. Emilio, thank you so much for taking time out of your day and sharing these insights with us. This was such a great conversation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so very much, Jay. You're so kind with your words, and I appreciate it. And I appreciate all that you're doing, and your podcasts are fantastic. So kudos to you, and keep up the great work.
What an amazing story of what Emilio went through in childhood, his upbringing, to now having the kind of impact that he has as a speaker and as an author. It's really inspiring. And as we do with every one of our episodes, I'm going to synthesize this down for you into 3 insights and 3 actionable takeaways. The first insight, the Cuban triad. Excuse me, the Cuban triad. I'll say that again. Where he said, in order to really achieve the kind of success that you want in your life, you need to implement these 3 things. 1, self-discipline. 2, resilience or perseverance. And 3, delayed gratification. This is the recipe, in his opinion, to success. Second insight, make a paradigm shift in what success truly is. True success requires time, patience, and persistence. Any setback, as he said wonderfully, is just a temporary step back. And he encourages you to embrace your failures, see what you can learn from them, and to not see them as something that's negative. Is actually part of your successful journey. Third insight, have a positive obsession. There's a discernment that we made in our conversation between a negative obsession, which is an addiction, where you feel like it's consuming you, to a positive obsession, which we defined as a passionate focus of a mission that you're on. And to have that positive obsession be what drives you to delay your gratification. Actionable takeaways. Number 1 is to make a conscious effort to delay gratification for your success. It needs to be something that you bring to your mind each day, that you're going to delay that gratification. You're going to make your daily activities all fueled by what is now your positive obsession. The second actionable takeaway is to take intentional breaks. The power of pause, which we discussed a few times in the conversation, having that opportunity to reflect back, to enjoy the ride, and to celebrate and acknowledge your progress. Third actionable takeaway, set rules for yourself. Oftentimes you hear the term having boundaries. He was referring to it as knowing when to shut it off, when you're going to stop working. having that kind of plan in place where you have a very clear delineating time or a kind of schedule in place whereby you know when you're working, you know when you're not, you know when you're taking breaks, you know when you're going to allow for a little bit of instant gratification, but you're very intentional about it all. You set these rules. And join us on Friday. I'm going to dive deeper into the pitfall of instant gratification, specifically around some of the shocking statistics on how often we use our smartphones and the impact it has on our mental and emotional well-being. It's gonna blow you away. And I'm gonna help you to be able to create some of those rules for yourself so that you can control your devices rather than your devices controlling you, so that you can practice delayed gratification day in and day out to achieve more in your life, in your career. Until next time, thank you so much for listening.